You're listening to the Deep Purple Podcast, a fan podcast about one of the most legendary bands of all time, Deep Purple. We take a look at the music, history, and people behind the band Deep Purple and beyond. Welcome to the Deep Purple Podcast, the first and only podcast devoted to one of the greatest bands in rock history, Deep Purple. Today's episode is episode number 112, John Lord Gemini Suite. And coming to you from the Gemini suburbs of Chicago, I'm your host, Nathan Beaudry.
And coming to you from the suburbs of Providence, I'm your co-host, John Parmesan the Matola.
So you had Parmesan today.
Yeah, this is a recurring theme. Chicken Parmesan.
Yeah, there could be many versions of Parmesan that you could have. What is your favorite kind of Parmesan?
Chicken. I'm not big into eggplant.
No, I love eggplant Parmesan.
If it's deep fried enough, the texture of eggplant kind of doesn't always do it for me.
It can be if it's not done well. It's not good. Yeah. But if it's done well, it's quite good.
And veal Parmesan just never appealed to me. Same reason. Same reason.
I just remember one of the first jobs I ever had, the restaurant, when I worked at that restaurant, Christopher's.
Oh boy.
There was this, one of the waitresses had her husband. I can't remember what his name is. He would come and sit at the bar. He was an old guy, and he would sit there and drink, and he'd have a cigarette, and he had like this really like this mouth like it's like almost like he was missing teeth or something. And my boss, he was just one of the funniest guys I've ever worked with. It just made the job just so much fun. So we had veal Parmesan on the menu, and he fried this piece of veal, and it came out of the fryer, and it like kind of folded over on itself. And the little papyrus plates that you put it onto to drain the fat. It kind of folded over on itself, so it looked like a mouth. And he came up to me and he was like, rah, rah, and he pretended he was that guy, like the waitress's husband. And he started like, I forgot what his name is, and he said like, hey, it's just George or whatever. And he's like, and he's moving the thing up and down. And the funny thing is, it looked exactly like him. It was just really. It was one of the funniest things I've ever. Like, just one of those times where like I had to take a minute. I had to like go in the back, like my sides were hurting. It was just the perfect moment. And he did it so straight faced, like it's just like matter of fact, like, hey, check it out, it's George. I wish I could remember that.
I love stuff like that. Probably
better that I can't remember either of their names. I'm sure they're not listening.
Yeah.
I would be shocked if that guy was still alive. That was like what, 30 years ago almost. And he was
so if he was really old then
he was quite old and unhealthy.
Probably dead
then.
by now.
Yeah, poor guy. He was a really nice guy, but it was just kind of a funny moment. But anyway, yeah, I said, it's funny. I said Gemini coming into here, and it is. We are actually in the astrological sign of Gemini as we record this. I'm not good with horoscopes, so I had to look it up. So Gemini runs from, I don't know what the dates are, but we are in Gemini. As a Gemini born on May 24th, you'll have a persistent and ambitious personality. All that happy horse crap.
Well, that's not me.
Nope,
I'm
you're
February.
not a Gemini. What you wait, you're an Aquarius?
Aquarius, yeah.
I know because my dad's an Aquarius, and he's just a few days after you.
Yeah. Are we known for being difficult or something?
I think
I don't know. I
think that's all of them.
I mean, I am in particular. So aside from all that, I am coming back with some Rhode Island facts.
My goodness. Wait. Okay. I'm ready now.
Okay. So, piggybacking there on chicken Parmesan, Italian, etc. So of the top cities outside of Italy, the fifth most populated city in the world with Italians, number 5 is Providence, Rhode Island.
Of course, that makes perfect sense. I wouldn't have guessed it was that high, but it makes sense.
Me neither.
There you go.
Yep. So I don't remember all the other ones leading up to it, but the first one really kind of surprised me. Was Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Really? that makes sense. It's a very multicultural sort of town.
Yeah, but number one outside of Italy with the largest Italian population. And I mean, I don't, there are some people that are more like well-read than me that are like, come on, you idiot, you should have known that. But
everyone knows that the fifth most populous Italian population in the world is Providence, Rhode Island. Everyone should have been on the tip of your tongue.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was like, I knew that we had a lot of Italians out here, but I would have thought that like maybe even Boston would be more because it's a bigger city. They have, Hanover Street, Mike's Pastry, that whole, Little Italy section, but.
So was New York number 2, maybe?
Yeah. New York was
that makes sense.
Definitely up there. It was like 2 or 3. I can't remember the other ones, to be honest. Actually, in terms of countries, do you know what the number 5 country is?
Number 5 country
of the same
Italian population?
Yes, most populated by Italians.
Switzerland?
Canada.
Wow, that's kind of surprising.
Mm-hmm.
The Italians, they love Canada.
Surprising facts.
See, that's
surprising facts. Yeah, well, I figured that since you have some roots there,
I'm half Italian and half Canadian, so there you go. I'd be right. I should move. I've been thinking I should move anyway. That's just going to seal the deal.
Oh,
hey.
Oh, so there you go. There's your Italian and Rhode Island facts for the episode.
Fantastic.
By your friend Parmigiana Matola.
And while we're on the subject, being in Chicago has the world's largest Polish population outside of Warsaw. So there you go. So hey, if you come to us looking for facts about Deep Purple and well, maybe not facts, loose talk about Deep Purple, and you get facts about all sorts of things that you never would have bargained on. Veal Parmesan, Italian populations. I mean, this is a service we're providing. So, if you get value out of this show, whether it's about Deep Purple or various forms of Parmesan, why don't you support us and give us a little value back? For as little as $1 a month, you can help support the Deep Purple show podcast the Deep Purple show.
You remember what the name of this is?
Yeah, what is this again? Come taste the pod. Come taste the podcast.
The Deep Purple show. Oh man, we missed the boat on that one.
I know. Well, it's our backup for.
Maybe we should change
it. Just change it now. Come taste the podcast. I mean, the logo would be great.
Come taste the podcast.
But yeah, if you want to help us continue on and put some money towards the new computer fund, and we were just talking before the show about some modifications we're going to make that that you won't be able to detect at all, but it will make the show much better and easier to produce. So if you want to help that, you can join in either on Patreon or PayPal. If you could also want to support the show, you can buy merch at our Etsy store and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps new people discover the show. Didn't even check this week if we had a new review in. Doesn't look like we do, not in America anyway. I'm doing my quick check. But maybe we'll get back to some older. I quite frankly, I just lost track of which older reviews I'd read, and I didn't want to reread one. So I was like, well, I guess I'll just go with newer reviews moving forward.
Check Argentina. Check Argentina.
I can't do that. Check. Maybe I'll do it in the interim. I'll look for something. But yeah, that's the greatest way to support the show. And speaking of people supporting the show, hey-o! We've got a new patron joining us at the $5 money lender tier. Zwapper, the Electric Alchemist, is joining us at the $5 tier. And so he says,
that's great.
Thank you guys for a great podcast. I'm a longtime listener, but late to the patron table. Keep up the great work and keep your pies eeled, the Electric Alchemist. And then he goes on to say that he didn't think it was fair that the $1 patrons all got the cool names. So he made up a made-up name at the $5 tier. Hey, there's no rules, guys. You can do that. And speaking of which, hey-o, new patron coming in at the $1 made-up name tier. This time, let me just check my email real quick. Yes, I didn't hear back, so hopefully this is okay. Coming in with a real name. So he's balancing this out. We've got a $1 patron with the real name and a $5 with a made-up name. And the $1 patron that is new is named Hans Lilia. So thank you very much for supporting the show. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. I always send an email back saying, is this the name you want to use, or is this the pronunciation? But this came in just like a couple of hours ago, so very brand hot off the presses. And we're recording this in the.
So you didn't want to make up a name?
Hans Lilia.
No? Or you don't know yet?
I don't know what. I think it's either Norwegian or Swedish. The name from what I researched. I found something saying it's a Swedish name, and there was a guy making a comment saying that's bullcrap. I'm Norwegian, and that's my name. So I was like, I guess it, like any name, it could go other ways. My name could be Canadian or French or whatever. But so yeah, so it's one of those two nationalities most likely. How about the Swedish fish or / Norwegian fish?
Norwegian fish.
The Norwegian fish. That's one of those things. Like,
is it a thing?
Like, do they have Swedish fish in Sweden, or is that just like an American thing? I don't know. Like, do we call them Swedish fish because
I don't know.
It's like fish candy. I think they do because I know at IKEA you can get like the little Swedish fish, but they might call them something else in Sweden. In America, we call them Swedish fish. And they're delicious.
So over there, they just probably call it fish.
Just fish. You go to a restaurant, I'd like the fish, and they bring you a bag full of gummy candies. Very confusing. I'm sure there's a word for it. But thank you very much for those two new patrons. Very much appreciated. Really appreciate everyone that supports our show. Speaking of people that support our show, thanks to our executive level patrons coming in at the $20 Shades of Deep Pockets tier. We have Ryan M. at the $15 Highball Shooter tier. Alan Ain't Too Proud to Beg at the Turn It Up to $11 tier. We have Frank Thielgard Mortensen, Clay Wambacher, and Mikkel Steen. And at the $10 Someone Came tier, Steve Seaborg of NameOnAnything.com and AllTheWorldsAstage.net, Jeff Bryce, Gerald Kelly, Victor Campos, and Richard Fusey. Thank you to all of you for your generous donations to the Deep Purple podcast. Big thanks to Jeff Bryce, who once again answered a lot of questions and sent me some information on today's episode when I was kind of just chatting with him about the album. So really always appreciate Jeff's support of the show. And then I also put together I was just curious the other day, and so I went through all the email notifications, everything, and I put together a list of the order that the patrons came in. And I just want to give a special appreciation to Clay Wambacher, who was our first patron. So I was like, and Steve Seaborg was a close second, came in right after. So thank you to both of you. Well, to everybody, of course, but to those that have been in early and often here for 2 years now, generously donating to the show. We really appreciate all your support. To patrons new and old alike, much appreciated. All right. So this is the point of the show where we talk about the album and talk about our history with the album. And this might be brief, John, but what is your history with the Gemini Suite?
I have no history.
Moving right along.
I mean, I've obviously heard of it, but I just never. It was never available when we were younger. And like most other things, I mean, I'd heard of all the side projects, and that was just one thing that was never available. And then I just kind of, forgot about it and moved on. And I'm sure that I had chances to hear it since then or have access to it, but just never really thought of it. So this will be a new listen for me.
Yes. So full disclosure, this will be a first listen for me as well. In a way.
I'm surprised.
And
I'm not surprised.
That is because when oh crap, why did this come out like this? Trying to get a copy of this picture here. But when my first encounter with this album was going to Boston, where we would go to get all of our like cool Deep Purple related stuff that was a little harder to come by, and
imports and stuff.
Yeah, there were a few main places: Tower Records, and then HMV, which is a British chain, so we could get cool stuff there. And I got a lot of my Deep Purple stuff. There was this other place. Do you remember there was this it was kind of almost like the arcade in Providence, but there was a record store inside of it, and there was like a Sbarro you could go to. Do you remember that place? Maybe it might have been the Coop, the Harvard Coop.
I can't remember.
It was like the Harvard Coop was like kind of almost like this indoor mall sort of situation, and there was like a record store up there, but it was like on a second floor or third floor. And I stumbled upon this, which is not what we're going to review today, but this is Deep Purple and the Orchestra of the Light Music Society, conducted by Malcolm Arnold, Gemini Suite live. So I saw this, I hadn't heard it before, snatched it right up, listened to it a few times, and then this came out, maybe this was 93, 94, something like that. So it was early on in my Deep Purple life, and I had already heard the concerto with you at that point, and so this was kind of like, oh, this is something different. Let me pick it up. And I remember it was in the bin along with, say, like Before I Forget and Saraband and stuff like that. And I was thinking, like, which one should I get? So I said, let me get this one because it's all of Deep Purple, and I didn't get the other ones on that trip. But that was my first exposure to Gemini Suite, and we'll get into a little bit about what we're reviewing today and what makes that different. So, as we know, John Lord, we talked about this a lot in our concerto episode, but that's 2 years old at this point. So you can go back and listen to its episode, like, I don't know, 9 or 10 or something, really early on, where we watched the concerto video and talked about it. And John Lord had been obsessed with combining rock music and orchestras, and he had tried it a few times with the Artwoods, his band that he was in previous to Deep Purple. They had booked this new jazz orchestra in 1966, but they ended up working with it never happened, and they started to develop something with this German conductor that never materialized, and then the Artwoods broke up, so that was kind of left on the floor. So you've got a few situations where John Lord keeps upping the ante. On the Book of Taliesin, he brings in the string section for the song Anthem. And then on their 1969 album, of course, there's April, which is a big, long, 12-minute song that's got rock band elements and composed elements, organ parts. And that was kind of the closest he came at that point to combining orchestra and rock. Then, of course, he gets the job to write the concerto. They book the Royal Albert Hall, and without the concerto even being written, and then decide, okay, well, here's the date we're going to be performing the concerto at the Royal Albert Hall. Get to work. Now you need to write it. He writes it. They perform it. As we all know, it caused a little bit of a rift with the band. They weren't super keen on it. It was one of the first major debuts of Mark II was doing the concerto, which is kind of doesn't fit really along the line of what Mark II was known for. So John Lord says this: it got us labeled as a group who jumped on the classical rock bandwagon. It drew attention to us at a time when we needed it, but we weren't expecting to be labeled as a group that plays with an orchestra. It caused a rift in the group. What they were afraid of, and what I hadn't seen was happening, was that people weren't sure what we were all about. They got frightened that we'd get railroaded into playing hundreds of concertos. They thought I didn't want to play rock and roll. And there was also even a point where John Lord almost left the band because it was causing this kind of resentment. And this is kind of almost the changing we talked about in the early days, how John Lord was kind of the spokesperson for the band and the band leader. This was the middle of the shift between the concerto and maybe in rock, where it became a little more apparent that Ritchie was more of the leader of the band. Not that they necessarily had a designated leader, but he took a little bit more of that responsibility, even if it wasn't like overtly declared. So after the concerto, as we know, they did one last concerto date in America at the Hollywood Bowl, where famously the score to the concerto was lost. We hypothesized on the show that Ritchie threw it into the ocean. We don't know, but when they redid the concerto 20 years later, he had to, or was it 30 years, about 30 years later, they had to rewrite it from scratch because the original score had been lost. So Lord gets commissioned by the BBC to write another one. They really liked how it went. They liked the TV event, the special. The BBC is like, well, let's do that again. Let's write something else. And John Lord was a little dissatisfied with the original concerto because he felt it was still a little bit more like the band would play, the orchestra would play. There was a little bit of interplay together, but he didn't feel it was like as cohesive. He kept kind of striving to get more and more close to that. And the Gemini Suite was his kind of final, I don't want to say final, but it was his next and latest attempt to bring the two together in a more cohesive way. So more so than the orchestra did. So So at this point, they booked the show and they performed it once. Deep Purple performed the concerto reluctantly with the Orchestra of the Light Music. That performance that I just showed you, it was recorded with Malcolm Arnold September 17th, 1970. And at this point, they were in a much better position. Black Knight was having some chart success, but Blackmore basically said, there cannot be any publicity for this. I don't want it advertised. I don't want anybody to know about it. We're going to do it. We're going to get it done, and we're going to move on. So they performed it. It was reviewed by a couple of magazines. It aired on British and Danish radio, and then it just faded into obscurity. It didn't get released on record until 1993, which is that copy that I just showed you, which was the Deep Purple performing it. So John Lord decides at this point he wants to record a studio version of it. Ritchie Blackmore says, well, you're going to have to find somebody else because I'm not doing it. Ian Gillan says the same thing. So that's why he gets the lineup that he gets, and we'll get into that in a little bit. So they recorded the album at Abbey Road Studio 1. The main orchestra was recorded there, and then Delane Lee, they did the studio rock sections and the mixing. Ian Gillan didn't agree to do it, so they brought in, to replace Ian Gillan, oddly, Yvonne Elliman and Tony Ashton to replace Ian Gillan.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, that's a Jesus Christ Superstar link right there.
Yeah, exactly. Two people from Jesus Christ Superstar.
Yvonne Elliman.
One a little bit more prominent than the other. Tony Ashton is just like says one line, but he's in the chorus. So
still,
yeah. But she was a part of Purple Records, and Lord loved her voice and decided it would work really well. In Ian Gillan's biography,
great voice.
Oh, fantastic. In Ian Gillan's book Child in Time, he describes Blackmore. He says Blackmore just went berserk when he found that there was a promotional poster for the concert, and he said the concerto has become a millstone around our necks. Like he was just like this. He was convinced, like we talked about during the concerto episode, that this concerto was just going to haunt them for the rest of his life, and he's going to have to end up, 50 years later, still playing these dates with orchestras. He just didn't want to do it. He wanted them to be a rock band.
No, he went on to just, playing like, with minstrels and fairies and pan flutes and instead.
It's kind of an interesting, and he also talks constantly about how much he loves classical music. So he's a very complicated man. So it's hard to say. So in John's own words, John says, the music on this album was originally written as a commission for the BBC and was first performed at the Festival Hall with Deep Purple and the Orchestra of the Light Music Society in September 1970. When it was broadcast on British and Danish radio, I composed the suite during the first 6 months of 1970, each movement being built around the musical personalities of the members of Deep Purple. However, during the period that the concert and the recording of this music grew away from the initial concept, it became to my mind not so much a composition for group and orchestra, but more simply music for amplified instruments and orchestra. To this end, we decided not to make it a Deep Purple project and to use specified soloists. The title is an allusion to the main characteristic of people born under the sign of Gemini, the twins, my own birth sign. Many thanks are due to all the soloists, the very fine London Symphony Orchestra, and to Mr. Malcolm Arnold for his invaluable help. A special thank you to Martin, Ian, and Roger. So originally it was written, it has 6 movements. 2 of them one's piano, one's organ, but the other ones are bass, guitar, vocals, and drums. So he basically wanted this, the movements to revolve around the members of Deep Purple and their personalities and showcase their musical abilities. And the same is true of the studio version, although it's a little bit different. So that's kind of the background of the idea behind the album. And it's very interesting that we are in the month of, or the zodiac sign of Gemini, or whatever the heck you want to call it, because that was just a complete accident that happened. I just Googled it after we started recording, and we're talking about Gemini. So how about that? We're recording this under Gemini. It'll be released under Gemini. If you're into that sort of hippy dippy nonsense, enjoy. But there's, too many musicians and everything in this orchestra to mention. We'll have links to all of them in the show notes and lists. it's conducted by Malcolm Arnold, who conducted the concerto and was a huge influence and support to John Lord. It was engineered by Dave Stock, who engineered the electric sections, Martin Birch, who mixed the album at Delane Lee, Mike Gray, who engineered the orchestral sections with Philip McDonald at Abbey Road, and Philip McDonald, who also worked on the Abbey Road parts. So yeah, that's the thing. The artwork for this album is there's like a lot of different versions. So the initial version is this, which you might be familiar with if you've seen this in the Deep Purple sections. It's the Gemini twins. And it's funny, you see the album behind me. My son, who is also a twin, not a Gemini though, he came down here the other day and he's like, Dad, what are those guys doing? And I was like, why are they flirting with each other? I was like, they kind of do look like they're making eyes at each other. But I was like, well, they're twins, so I don't think they're flirting with each other, but who knows with all that crazy stuff that goes on.
They're also nude.
Well, they not really. They're not wearing shirts. So
what's that guy in the front though? He's not wearing pants?
Well, we'll show you when we get to the gatefold, I guess. We'll show you what's going on there.
Okay.
Don't worry, it's not going to get us kicked off of YouTube or anything. At least I hope not. But so this was the original album cover, Purple Records. It features the two twins kind of lying in this beautiful garden with a waterfall in the background and looking lovingly at each other. And then the gatefold is here. You've got 5. Oh, and I didn't mention. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention Albert Lee is doing the guitar, because obviously we mentioned Ritchie Blackmore refused. So Albert Lee, as we've seen on Green Bullfrog and many other occasions, is a great. He has a great similar style. They grew up kind of in the same camp. I think they both learned under Big Jim Sullivan, so they've got very similar styles. And although Albert Lee tended to go a little bit more like of a different route. I'm not familiar enough with him to say exactly, but he feels like he's more like a finger picking kind of guy. But I think his solos and his blues style is very similar to Blackmore. So it's got big pictures of you've got John Lord, Roger Glover, Albert Lee, Tony Ashton, Yvonne Elliman, and then Ian Paice. And then you've got like a little blurb here with the sections and all the players. And then the backside of the gatefold shows the full. Yeah, so it shows the full thing. So and if you know stuff about the zodiac signs, maybe you know a little bit more, but it looks like one of the Gemini twins seems to have like the body of a squid, and the other one has like the body of like a multi-legged chicken or bird of some sort, and they're all kind of like intertwined with each other. And he's even actually, the one twin is actually sticking his talons into the squid twins things and drawing blood, which is very weird because on the other half of it, they don't seem to be bothered by any of this, but it's almost like their bottom halves of them are fighting and the top halves of them are lying in this weird garden. So very interesting.
It is. I think that the inside of the album, I think it's pretty funny how everybody gets a normal picture except for Tony Ashton. He's just got his eyes closed and he's like,
yeah. And his picture's all blurry. It's almost like they didn't it's probably like we've talked about these albums before. They probably didn't have a picture of him and it was like the last minute and they just found this one and they said, we'll make it work. You know, back then you would have had, even like everybody else, like even like Albert Lee, he's looking off to the side, but it looks like everybody but him and Tony Ashton had like studio pictures done, because everybody's just kind of like looking straight ahead, and like you got the other two who are just kind of like, kind of like Glenn Hughes Christmas album, like album cover photo shoots. Yeah. It's like, when are you taking the picture? That's it. That's the picture. I'm already packing up my gear. I'm heading home. But yeah, I mean, it could be like back then.
This is very,
if Tony Ashton was, say, in America on tour and they needed the thing done, they'd have to find whatever picture they had around, because the alternative would be contacting somebody in America to track him down, a professional photographer, take the picture, send it back to England. I mean, it would have all taken time. So they maybe just decided to go with whatever was quickest and easiest.
Yeah,
so,
just my OCD doesn't like this, because it's like you have like the pictures are all different. Yvonne Elliman's head is bigger, and you know, it's just like than everybody else's. So it's still cool though. I like the concept of that, and then all the kind of studio pics behind it. But it's definitely a very 70s looking album, you know, which you know, is kind of almost like a little bit a mix of planned out, but also kind of like whatever.
yeah.
Like,
I think it's one of those things where it's kind of sloppily done, but it works. You know, I do like kind of like that collage style. But yeah, you're right. Yvonne Elliman's head seems to, it's like much closer up on her, so her head takes up more. And maybe they did that on purpose because they didn't have enough text to fit up here. So they said, just make Yvonne Elliman's head bigger. That's fine. But the record label there, obviously the purple label, nothing crazy right there. Now in North America, it was released in 1973. So the first one came out in the performance was in 1970. The UK version came out in 71. And in America, it was reissued with this cover, which is like a cloudscape, some like angel with wings, like bare-chested angel with wings lying in the foreground, looking at herself in a mirror. Maybe a volcano in the background, and a gigantic like fish coming out like way up in the background, about to swallow like a planet. It's a really cool cover. It's unclear. I found a couple of vague references to it, but some were saying the British cover may have just been too controversial with, you know, the like you said, it looked like two nude guys. So like, two nude guys, we can't have two guys with their shirts off. Let's put a woman with their shirt off on the cover of this one. Although she's much smaller in the shot. But they also said they might just didn't like the British cover. The British cover is weird. It does look weird. I mean, it's kind of cool, but it's just a bizarre cover. So that's, I think, why they went with this.
It's less bizarre without the gatefold.
Yeah, it makes a heck of a lot more sense. I looked at it and
I'm like, okay, I could see that being like a painting in a gallery or something like that. But then you open it up and you see the squid legs and stuff, and it's like, okay, like, the hell is this?
And then the back of they didn't have a gatefold on the US version. They've got but it's kind of the same pictures, a slightly different layout, same blurry picture of Tony Ashton, kind of thrown together. And then it does have some text here, which is what I read earlier. Well, is this what I read earlier? Yeah, about how he talks about that the Gemini is his birth sign. And then one cool thing is they list all the players in the orchestra and under their birth sign. So they start with Gemini. They list all the Geminis, the Cancer. They list all the Cancers. Ultimate 70s album focusing around zodiac signs. It was re-released in 2008 with Simon Robinson with a new cover again, which shows like a bunch of different constellations. And it kind of lists John Lord, Roger Glover, and Ian Paice of Deep Purple, Tony Ashton of Ashton Gardner Dyke & Co., Albert Lee of Heads, Hands, and Feet, Yvonne Elliman from Jesus Christ Superstar, performing John Lord's Gemini Suite. Then it was released again a couple years back under Air Music with this cover, which is kind of looks like ruins of a bunch of like ancient Greek or Roman statues, and these two statues like kind of with their hands on each other's shoulders. And a lot of good re-releases of this. Yeah, this one's kind of a cool looking one. I think this is a rare situation where I think the original album cover might be the weakest of the four. Usually I don't like them messing around with album covers, but we of course try to keep things as true to the original as possible. So then it does the traditional thing of, you know, John Lord appears courtesy of Harvest Records. Same thing with Roger Glover and Ian Paice, and Albert Lee courtesy of Island Records, and Tony Ashton courtesy of Capitol Records. And that's a little quick rundown of the album art. Had a hard time finding like who the actual artists were. Found like photographers, designed by Jim Willis and West 4 Designs, photography by Jane Jackson, who would have probably done all those photos that were cut up and put on in there, but not a heck of a lot beyond that. So, or about the new covers. All right. That's all the information you need to be prepared to listen to what we're going to listen to, which is the 6 movements of the Gemini Suite. But before we go there, we must, of course, thank our core level patrons. Coming in at the $6.66 tier, no one is still available for anyone feeling evil enough to join. At the $6.65 almost evil tier, we have Kenny Wymore. At the $5.99 nice price tier, Fielding Fowler and Dr. Jill Brees. At the $5 money lender tier, Greg Sealby, John Convery, Arthur Smith, German Heindel, Adrian Hernandez, Jesper Alman, Alexei the Perfect Stranger Slepikoff, James North, Mark Hodgetts, Kev Roberts, Will Porter, and Heyo Whopper, the Electric Alchemist. And then at the $3 Nobody's Perfect tier, we have Peter Gardo, Ian DeRosier, Mark Roback, Anton Glaving, Andrew Meyer, Duncan Leask, Stuart McCord, and Heyo again. Oh, wait, no, he comes later. Sorry. Unheyo. Unheyo that. Unheyo. Unheyo. It was a premature heyo. You are correct, sir. Okay. All right. So with that, I think we're ready to launch into this. The first part is guitar, and the soloist is, of course, Albert Lee to kick off the Gemini Suite. So here we go. That part kind of reminds me of the concerto. There's a very similar part with Ritchie.
Yeah.
And the sound quality is much better. It was done in a studio versus kind of that live recording.
Yeah. This is some good stuff.
Very cool. And you can already tell, I think, how it's integrated more into the orchestral segments. Yep. Whereas before,
I was just going to say, yeah,
it was a little blocky in the concerto, and I love that John Lord was constantly challenging himself to up the ante.
But I mean, you can already tell this is more fully realized, kind of what he was probably hoping to aim for with the concerto. But, you know, as we know, he was under time constraints and, you know, all that. So far, I'm feeling it's pretty successful.
It's kind of really matching that little groove that Albert Lee had going on. And early on, you can tell that Albert Lee is a great analog for Ritchie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very similar, but you can tell he's his own player. But on the Green Bullfrog album, we had a lot of like trouble trying to determine like who was who.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
This sounds very like 70s movie soundtrack, you know?
But you can tell why they chose Albert Lee. I mean, you could picture Ritchie playing this.
Yep. And it'll be interesting
for sure.
If we ever get to the Deep Purple version of the Gemini Suite, see what the differences are. Because I know there are some, but you figure there's not going to be a ton of differences in what the orchestra's playing if they're following the score. So, but I know John Lord says he did make some adjustments going into the studio for it. I love how the timpani are tuned to the same notes. Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
So cool.
Oh, that was nice.
I think it would be very easy to make this be like 4 bars of guitar solo, 4 bars of orchestra doing something, but the way they throw them back and forth is so random, it makes it really interesting. You don't know what to expect.
I love his tone.
Awesome. It's a beautiful piece that he's playing.
Yeah, it's just really full.
Almost reminded me of Coronarius Redig there for a minute. This will be on the record collection of any like kind of 70s stoner looking to just vibe out and listen to this. Be a great one to have on in the background.
You know, in a way, it kind of reminds me of like that really early version of a Steve Vai composition.
Yeah.
Because he was, you know, he played some stuff that,
yeah, totally,
that was very similar to this.
Those transitions just work so well. That groove, that down down down. That's another one that sounds kind of like like we talked about a couple weeks ago. It sounds like a warning by Ainsley Dunsmore, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Guitar almost does sound like a little low in the mix during the orchestral parts. I don't know if that was intentional.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to mix that with an entire orchestra and not have one overpower the other.
And I don't know if they wanted it to just sound like more like it was an instrument in the orchestra versus being on top of everything. But obviously in rock music, it would kind of dominate during a guitar solo. You wonder if Ritchie of today would be as against doing something like this, because it's just so strange. It's kind of, I guess it's kind of like when he doesn't, who knows what his real motivations are, but like when he didn't like whatever the funk direction that they're going in, but he's so good at doing anything that you wonder if it's just him having a moment or just not wanting to be involved, or or just not being in the mood, because he does it so well.
Well, regardless, I have to say that I don't miss Ritchie on this at all. I think Albert Lee was excellent on this. I mean, his playing, his tone was like, it was recorded and played like flawlessly. Thought it was like fantastic.
Yeah.
Like I really enjoyed it. Like, I mean, that's I think a rare example that I can think of like an early 70s album where the guitar tone is, and the playing is like just perfect. I think.
I'd agree.
Really great.
Sounded pretty incredible. Just great style and dynamics to his playing. Like, again, I don't know if he's mostly a finger player. It sounds like he was maybe using his fingers at least for part of it. But yeah, you get a lot more dynamics there, and he during the quiet parts, he really got like soulful on it, and just really nailed it. So yeah, these funny thing about this album, the track names are just drums, vocals, bass guitar, organ. So not super inspired names, but how would you rank guitar?
Well, I really enjoyed it, so I give it a 4.5. I thought it was really, I mean, from the guitar to the orchestra too. I don't want to discount that. I mean, that was just really like just excellently recorded. I think maybe the thing that kept me from giving it a 5 is that there's still a little bit of separation between the kind of the rock and the orchestra side. Like it did blend a lot better than the concerto.
Yeah.
But there were times where, he was just playing solo on his own, which was great. But I would have loved to hear more of like the orchestra playing as the backup band while he soloed over it, as opposed to doing solos just with no other music. But I mean, that's like I don't know, I guess a minor criticism, which, when you I'm like, in considering like how great like the music is, just the maybe the arrangement a little bit, or the composition is very minor kind of I guess critique that I would have.
Yep. I'm torn. I'm gonna give it a 4. I really thought it was a great showcase of Albert Lee, and just really interesting start to the album. Just very interesting music. You got all sorts of things. You got cool groove, like bluesy grooves, and almost kind of slow funky grooves, the classical elements, everything blending together really well. Great start to the album, and you can already kind of tell from listening to this that it's an upgrade to the concerto, which we love the concerto, and it's like such a great piece of history and piece of music. But like you said, there's so much more. A year had passed, well, I guess 2 years by the time you get to the studio version of this, and he'd kind of fleshed out a lot of the things if you do this kind of thing multiple times, you get better and better at it each time, and it shows that he definitely got a lot better. So,
and honestly, it's like it's interesting and cool to hear something different. Like, I mean, if I haven't heard this before and you You said you heard the live version, right?
Yeah, just the live
Like a while
version, and
ago?
it was in whatever 93, 94. Whenever I bought that was
Right.
that would have been the year that I last listened to it. It was one of those
Right.
things. Like I liked it, but it's kind of like the concerto in the same way, where not necessarily something I was just going to put on and listen to at that time anyway.
Yeah.
But it was one of the things I appreciated, and then just kind of moved on. So
Right, but there's
listened to it
also
3 or
like
4
this
times.
being right, this being like kind of a newer discovery. Like we know the concerto, we already know it. We've known it for years. So this is like discovering a new piece of music. So it's, already it's more exciting, to us.
Right. Yeah. The 3 or 4 times I listened to it 28 years ago didn't really stick with me so much that I'm like, oh yeah, this part, of course. So yeah, it'd be interesting to see what the difference is between the two. So, all right, that brings us to our next track, which is piano, and obviously who's going to be the soloist for that section, Mr. John Lord.
Mm-hmm.
Little Dave Brubeck kind of groove. Great groove. During the live performance, John Lord did this part on the organ, but he said he rewrote it for piano for the album version. So it's in 7/8.
Yeah, great choice.
John Lord had written a movie soundtrack right around this time, so it has a great movie soundtrack feel to it.
Yeah. Just picture like a guy with a big handlebar mustache walking into a bar, like, give me a martini. Yeah, send that lady across the bar a drink.
Sounds like he did like a string swell on the guitar, and then they kind of faded it into. It almost sounded like it could have been violins.
Yeah.
And whereas he takes it to this level here, he'll continue again when he does a few years later. Well, he does Windows after this. He does Saraband, so he's constantly revisiting this theme. And as you remember, we really enjoyed Windows quite a bit. It was a fun one to watch. Like that little whimsical little piano line he throws in there.
I feel like it's easier for Lord to integrate the piano into the orchestra than it is to integrate a guitar into it.
Yeah. Yeah, the piano. The piano is already an instrument in the orchestra. It's really the only instrument that has the exact same version. And obviously there's upright basses and there's different kinds of percussion. There's not a full drum set, so it's the only one that really works that way. I was just about to start counting to see what time that was in, but it stopped. Sounds like 7 still. kind of wonder what the musical reading capabilities of the rest of the players are. Obviously, everyone in the orchestra can do it. John Lord can do it. Not sure about Albert Lee. Pretty sure Roger Glover doesn't read music. So then it's kind of like, it's almost harder for them to figure out, where do I come in? Where does it stop? Where does it start? This would be one of the more interesting comparisons to draw between the live version, seeing what this would sound like with organ. It's cool they did piano in one and organ in the other rather than organ in both.
Makes sense with piano. It sounds much more organic.
Mm-hmm. Piano sounds organic. Thank you for giving that the laugh it deserved. It's kind of like a similar thing that we just saw. There was a. So far, I've integrated both instruments for a large portion of the movement, and then, 4 or 5, 6 minutes in, given the instrument a complete solo with no backing or accompaniment at all, and then presumably the orchestra will rejoin. I mean, you wonder how much of this is improvisation on his part. Like, I have X number of bars.
The man was a genius. Who even knows?
Right. He could have just as easily improvised that whole section as he could follow along on the music. It sounds semi-composed.
I mean, it probably is.
This would have to be if they... It's hard to have an entire orchestra improvise together.
Well, that's really cool. Well, that really flowed nicely.
Says he wrote most of this in America, like in hotel rooms.
Wow.
That sounded like somebody. Oh, it's like strings. It's like somebody kicked the violin section out of a window. That's where he came up with the idea for windows. So piano.
Really interesting.
Another interesting movement here. How would you rate piano?
So, sorry, the sheet's giving me shit right now.
Oh, the sheet's always giving you problems.
I know.
It's giving you sheet.
The sheet's giving me sheet. See, I'll give piano a 4. I could have listened to that first section like all day. Like if that whole song was like that jazzy kind of part, that was really cool. That was really good. I enjoyed that a lot. And then it went into the whole orchestral, almost at times kind of dissonant sounding kind of arrangement, which I still think makes it interesting. The piano I don't typically enjoy as much as guitar, but I mean, like we said, like John Lord is a genius, and there were some good sections there, especially toward the end where the orchestra kind of picked up what John Lord was doing, and it kind of like integrated really, really well. So already, I mean, you can tell that, you know, just 2 songs in, like the kind of the melding of the orchestra and the other instruments is already, as you pointed out, more fleshed out. So I'm enjoying this listen.
Yeah, I will also give it a 4. I think I agree with everything you said, except I think I probably enjoy the piano a little bit more than you do as an instrument. But other than that, I agree with everything you said, and I feel like he has the benefit of having all the times having tried this leading up to this point, and then also having performed essentially the same thing live and saw what worked and what didn't work. And like he said, his exact quote was something along the lines of, what does he say? He said that when he was doing it for the organ, he says, "I just did it for myself. I rewrote it for piano on the album." So he felt, I guess it was maybe too like self-indulgent or something. I don't know, which is why he changed it to piano. So
yeah, I mean, the organ would have been more upfront, maybe a little. It maybe could have had the ability to be more on the rock side, or a little more flamboyant, heavy, whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that he made the right choice. I think it really it fit in really well with what they were trying to do on the album.
Yeah, and I agree that beginning like jazzy section was awesome. That was I could have also just listened. It could have been an entire album of that, and I would have been 5. Give the whole thing a 5. But all right, so we're moving on to the final movement of the first side of the LP, and that is drums featuring you know who, Mr. Ian Paice.
Looking forward to this.
At times when he's just doing the snare drum, it sounds like it could be just a regular orchestra, right?
Yeah.
I wonder what Ritchie and Ian were doing while they were recording this.
Maybe they at the pub. I mean, imagine this, though. Ian Paice being as young as he was at this time and already recording music like this.
Yeah.
I mean, it's no wonder he's so good.
And we talked about the concerto. I forget how old.
Because I mean, he started like right out of the gate, just recording with such just prominent musicians.
Yeah.
And doing such interesting projects.
So he would have been 23 when they recorded this.
You can already tell it's him.
Yeah. He had distinctive roles. Only regret is that there's no video. You can't see the orchestra rolling their eyes and things.
Oh, here we go. The old orchestra guy. He thinks he's good.
Look at this little show off.
Oh yeah, typical awesome pacey solo.
Yeah, like he does those drum rolls and does those like really abrupt stops and then goes right back into them. Did like one of his more recent YouTube videos was like a little tutorial on some of the fundamentals of drums and talking about one-handed or doing drum rolls and different ways of doing drum rolls. And talked about paradiddles, all sorts of stuff. It was pretty interesting.
You know, just knowing what we know about what a powerful player he is, it almost sounds like he was holding back a little bit. I mean, sure, maybe for the studio. Like, it sounds very measured, but maybe it had to be because of the, you know, maybe it was written out to go along with the orchestra.
It's not that bass drum.
Yeah, it's like I said before, this is recorded really well.
Yeah, and I think that's something the concerto missed out on a little bit, which is mostly because technologically, it's, especially in 1969, difficult to record the two different things and mix them together. And plus, you got Martin Birch involved.
Yeah.
Now, so that makes things easier. You're just teasing the very edge of that snare drum right now. There he comes. And it's an interesting format, you know, having, like you said, building each movement around each member of Deep Purple, but also having this piece that's based around the instrument, going into a solo, coming out of the solo, and still having it, it's still like the drums are present and driving the song, but there's something more musical going on as well.
And really, I mean, John Lord did achieve that. I mean, over half of Mark II is on this album. Yep. Really, if you think about it.
Is this really, is this the real Deep Purple Mark III that we're seeing here? We have to rewrite all the marks. Mark III is actually 4 as well. Squeeze this.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, it was because Yvonne Elliman is part of Mark II.5.
Yeah, see, it's 2.5. They tried Yvonne Elliman and Tony Ashton. They decided they'd go with Hughes and Coverdale instead. Going into the next movement,
we're think about that. That would be really interesting.
Yeah, it'd be really awesome.
Well, would have been really interesting.
I'm just thinking of Tony Ashton singing "Burn." Let's burn.
No, just no.
The sky's red. And I don't understand. He's so great.
Oh.
That bass drum just feels like a heartbeat. It's so. I know
it really does. It feels like it's like the.
Wasn't it Daniel Glass saying that Ian Paice didn't muffle his kick drum? Like, it sounds very muffled. Maybe just for the studio he would. I don't know.
But it sounds very up close. Like, it sounds like everything was.
Yeah.
My limited knowledge of how you mic drums, but it sounds like everything was mic'd up really close. Which you get a really studio sound from it.
Yeah, and I think part of what sounds really cool, obviously, is something like this in say the Royal Albert Hall sounds awesome because of the reverb and the, you know, listening to Ritchie's guitar and all that sounds great. But there's also something to be said of having it a slightly more dry feel to it like it does on this.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, the definitely dry I think is a good way of putting that, because you can tell that, like, you can hear the drums. It's very studio, very like closed mic, like no kind of like reverb or room reverb or anything. And then you hear like the kick drum, and it sounds just like it's like right up in your face.
Yeah,
Which
and you don't
is,
necessarily
I thought it
need.
was a really good
Yeah, you don't
production
need
though.
all that extra reverb on the drums when the orchestra's coming in with so much of it, you know.
Oh,
Okay,
sure.
drums. How do you rank the drums?
So I'll give drums 3.5. I liked it, but as we all know, I'm not really a drums person. More guitar. And even though this was really good and it was like really impressively recorded, I did feel that, for whatever reason, like I think that Pacey's energy was not as much as like when he has done solos in the past. And I know that could be because like maybe it was charted out, or he was in the studio, or he had to, keep within a certain time, for the orchestra to come in at some point. But again, I feel it's kind of a minor criticism. It's just like hearing like even like his live drum solos, the isolated burn tracks. It's like you could just really hear like the power and the energy that he played with. And this was definitely like skilled, but I didn't feel that spontaneity from him, which I don't know, from Ian Paice. I kind of want that a little bit more. But again, I know the context to which we're listening to this in, and I by no means thought that it was a bad performance at all. Just didn't like it as much as the first couple of songs.
Fair enough.
But still really good, really listenable.
I will also give it a 3.5. I liked it, and again, if it maps out that same format that we get on the first two movements. But there's fewer places to go melodically, obviously, with drums, but I think they did a really, really good job bringing that in. I like the ending part, but it felt like in the guitar part, there was that little, like, there were a couple little groove areas, and the piano part that was that cool jazzy intro. We didn't really get that in the drum part. We got a cool solo, we got cool integration with the orchestra, but there was no little, if you will, like a signature little 16 bars of grooving on some sort of, whatever, some sort of beat or something, at least not in the same way. So that's the only reason I would, if it had something like that, like a hook, I guess, if it had a hook like those other two did, I'd give it that. And I know classical music isn't for hooks, but I'm a hook kind of guy. I'm not necessarily a classical music guy. So when I hear stuff like that, that's what really, it hooks me in. There you go. Okay, now it's time to flip the album over. We get to the second side here, and we're going to introduce the vocals, the Von Element and Tony Ashton. Here we go.
This should be interesting.
It's worth noting that between tracks, I just got a message from our new patron Hans that he's going to come up with a silly name. So, in case you're wondering, next week we should have it. I'll give him a deadline.
So he's got to think about it.
He's got to think about it. Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
So we're a minute into this 6-minute movement, and there's a distinct lack of vocals so far. So maybe they'll just kind of come in that middle section like we've heard in the previous two movements. good, but it seems low in the mix.
Yeah.
It sounds distant.
Yeah.
And again, they could be going for that
that's disappointing.
Because it's classical music, being it is more of an instrument rather than the vocal. And in pop or rock music, you're expecting it to be in the foreground a little bit more. But
well, I don't know. She was pretty forward in Jesus Christ Superstar, though.
Yeah, but that's a musical. You know, this is an orchestral piece.
Hmm. This is really kind of different style for her voice. It's very like minor sounding.
And I think she's doing Gillan's part too, which is, so she's kind of sounds like she's at the bottom of her range.
No, she sounds great, but she's kind of disappointed in the production.
Yeah. It's not even just that it needs more volume, but it just EQ'd differently or something, because it gets lost a little with all the other instruments. I love that. He's very Joe Cocker sounding. But again, he's even lost in the mix too. I love the horn, that like kind of call and response with the horns. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Very moving track.
Yeah, it was a very different vocal for the two of them. I mean, like you said, if it was obviously written for Gillan, they kept it the same, you know, kind of like the tone of the whole song was really kind of like almost like too, you know, melancholy for them.
Yeah.
You know,
so what would you rank vocals?
Yeah, I give it a 3.5. And here's why. I think that I thought the music was really good. Like it had this really kind of sad quality to it. I really enjoyed. I really got to take some points away because I'm really just kind of disappointed with how the vocals are integrated. I mean, it's supposed to be a showcase for the vocals, and I don't really think they were showcased. I mean, you had two really good vocalists. I mean, I'll say it about Tony Ashton. He's really distinctive. But I mean, Yvonne Elliman, I mean, you know, you've heard how I've sung her praises before, saying that her voice is basically like just perfect. And, I think you hit on it, is like it wasn't EQ'd right. It wasn't mixed high enough. And I mean, I get that, everything has to be together, mixed together with the orchestra. But I mean, I feel like in this, like she sounded really, as opposed to everything else, sounded really kind of up close and like high in the mix. And then you have the vocals, which, are supposed to be featured in this, and they sounded really kind of echoey and far away. And, it just almost kind of like an afterthought,
Yeah. Yeah.
didn't really feel like a feature to me. So I don't know if it were mixed differently, or maybe even if it were just like Yvonne Elliman, if they had featured one vocalist and, done something a little more intentional with it. I don't know. It kind of missed the mark for me a little bit. I had higher expectations with her, so I'm a little disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, I'll also give it a 3.5, but I wouldn't say it had anything to do with her. I think her and Tony Ashton's performances
No.
were both great. Yeah, higher expectations, I guess. Yeah, I just don't want it to sound like it's anything either of them did. Because I really like how I like trading off vocals and multiple vocalists. I think that always interests me. So I love what she was singing. I loved what he was singing when he came in. Kind of really kind of surprised me just how well he worked with it. It's just, to me, it's all in the production. I think I could see this easily getting a 4 or 4.5 if they were just brought forward in the mix a little bit, maybe compressed a little more, EQ'd a little differently, which is funny because this is the 2008 remaster. So it had to have been kind of a conscious decision to make them. It sounded to me, it's kind of like the difference between me talking. It sounded like they're too far from the mic. Like it's me talking here, or I rolled back my seat a little bit and I'm talking here. So right now I'm saying all the same things, but I sound distant and far away because I'm about an extra foot away from the mic. Now I come back up and it didn't sound like they were close enough to the microphone. And that might be something that's really hard to fix if that was the case. But of course, I'm just guessing. I have no idea. But I can't imagine that would have been what they did. It just seems really weird. But yeah, a little disappointing because I feel like that. I still think the emotion behind it and the performances, and when they both start singing together, it works really, really well because it's very much, we were joking about it, but it's a lot like Coverdale and Hughes because they're two people who have very, very different voices, and that really, to me, works really well. Having that, Hughes or Elliman have that higher, more smoothed out voice. Coverdale and Ashton have a more gravelly, raspy, kind of husky sounding voice. And when you put them together, it sounds just like magic. And it's a shame that didn't get produced a little better. So
yeah, I agree.
All right. But anyway, that's that. Second to last track here, we're going to be featuring one of our favorites, Mr. Roger Glover, for the bass guitar movement. Raunchy, distorted bass there.
Love it.
Nice. Sounds like Mars, the bringer of war. really extra appreciate this because, you know, this isn't Roger Glover's wheelhouse, but he's rocking it. Who they would have gotten if Roger Glover backed out. Now you get 2 bass tracks going here. Like hard pan left and right.
Funny if they called Nicky Simper back. They didn't get Glover.
Really interesting. I mean, obviously they couldn't have done this live.
No, but this is really
unless they got like Victor Wooten to do really it. Cool. You could probably do that live. Much like Ian Paice, he's kind of playing with the tempo a little. There's also something really nice about this, like that John Lord is like wrote this whole thing around, like it's like a love letter to his fellow bandmates, you know, featuring all of their styles and their personalities. It's really cool. And extra funny that Gillan and Blackmore are like, no thanks. I wrote this about you. Featured her on your specialties. Albert Lee can play it. Great little dynamics of him kind of playing really softly in the background. Funny little ending. Boop, boop, boop. little fanfare. It's like, ladies and gentlemen, Roger Glover. Boop, 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 boop. Just see him like kind of walking off stage with his bass as they play that. Oh.
Yeah, bye. See ya.
All right. What's your thoughts on bass guitar?
I have to think about it.
He looks deep in thought, and this one's throwing him, folks. If you're not watching the YouTube video.
Yeah. No, it was good. It was good. You know what? I am going to give it a 3.5. I was thinking about giving it higher, but I ranked it a little bit lower because while I enjoyed it, like hearing this solo bass like that, it's almost kind of like it was cool, but it was almost kind of jarring. Like it didn't fit in as well as like the guitar, the piano with the orchestra. Yep. But it was definitely a novel idea, which I liked and I appreciated. And there were some good parts in there. Like the overdubs were really a different type of thing that, you know, we don't think we've heard anybody overdub yet for the solo instruments, which was really, you know, kind of a cool thing to get that kind of melody in there. Um, but I don't know. I felt some of his choices were a little, um, what's the word? Unsettling, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like his, like, I love the bass. I like his bass playing, but I guess it's a different type of, bass playing that I'm into. Like you said, it's I'm like, you know, like something that's a little more hooky, and this was more of like just kind of a solo.
Yeah.
Which was cool nonetheless. Like, I mean, any of my critical thoughts on any of these songs doesn't mean that I disliked them or they weren't good, because I do like them and they're all good. But this one was it was definitely cool, but not one of my favorites. I still think the first track is still up there.
Yeah, I would agree. I agree also with the 3.5, and kind of for the same reason I gave it to, not the same as the vocals, but as the drums, where I felt like there wasn't that cool little hook at any point. It was really the kind of the hookiest thing, I think, was when he was just going dum 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 with the one bass, and then the other ear he was kind of doing some other stuff, which was really cool.
Yeah.
And as a studio effort, it's a really cool track, and the whole album is just, I'm really loving it. It's a lot of fun to listen to. But if you
yeah,
excuse me, but if you look at it as its own, you're glaring at me like you're looking at me like, why didn't you use the cough switch?
No.
like, what are you doing? I thought about it. I was like, if I use the cough switch though, it's just gonna be an awkward silence because I'm in the middle of talking. But yeah,
I wasn't thinking that at all.
Your eyes got all narrow. You were like, what are you doing, man?
You son of a bitch.
What have these things for anyway? But yeah, I like I said, I think it's a good it's a really good track, and I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, it didn't have the same kind of X factor that those other tracks did, so that's why I give it that rating. And with that, I think we are ready to move on to the final movement, which is called Organ. You know who that's going to be. Here we go.
Oh boy, this is a king size track too. 12 minutes.
Yeah, it's the standout longest track. Well, it's John Lord's album. It's called Organ. Closes it out.
He can do whatever the heck he wants.
Exactly. There he comes.
I'm like all excited. Here he comes.
He's got the really gentle church organ tone on right now. It sounds like what he's playing in April, you know? But you know he's going to be cranking that Leslie up at some point. He's just going to start bending that organ backwards. So. And I got to say, I'm calling it right now. I'll be very disappointed if he doesn't start rattling tubes and bending the thing backwards.
Yeah.
Like, I'm gonna demand my money back for this purchase. That CD store is still open. There's already a piano player in that orchestra somewhere, so you can hear some piano being played. This is just like a tease for me. I'm like, when's it gonna come? When's it gonna really belt out that organ? He's just messing with us now. Got like a little stray guitar going on there. Bass, the drums. Comes the organ.
Kind of sounds like everybody is kind of in there.
Ramping up. This is what was missing from those other. This is the hook. Almost sounds a little Mark 1.
Yeah.
Oh, it was like a tease. I wanted more of that.
Huh.
That's cool. They're kind of echoing what he just played.
Yeah, yeah, I noticed that. Really nice.
Sounds like listen, learn, read on a little bit.
Yeah, right, like Mark 1, but like with better production.
Yeah, exactly. This is perfect. The whole orchestra backing up the band like that is great.
I love that stuff.
And it's like very like, it sounded like that sounded more like a Mark II jam, but like more happy. More like major dominant sort of thing.
Jeez.
And that sounds the most like the concerto when they were doing some of that back and forth stuff. It's the halfway mark right there. John Williams now. I'm watching like one of the spooky parts of an Indiana Jones movie. They bring out the monkey brains or whatever. Yeah, exactly. Weighing the sandbag. For those of you listening, John is doing a picture-perfect imitation of Harrison Ford emptying some sand from a sandbag. Funny, they're not really bringing in any guitar in these jams, at least for the organ part.
Yeah, I was thinking that. Yeah, maybe Albert Lee was just like, nope, one day, done, bye.
It's better than they got from Ritchie.
Hey, I'm not missing it from here. This is some good stuff.
Oh, this is great. right? Yeah.
I mean, basically, you have 3/5 of Mark II right here.
This reminds me of that. Remember that?
Jamming out.
The outtake from Who Do We Think We Are, when like Roger Glover was stuck in traffic, and Ritchie played bass, and they did like a bass organ and drum jam.
Yeah.
It reminds me of that. Like, same kind of vibe. That would have been great if Ritchie said, "I'll play on it, but I'm playing the bass." Kicked Roger Glover out, so you had Albert Lee, Ritchie Blackmore, and bass.
Oh, wouldn't have been the first time. He kicks some ass on bass.
Yeah, he sure does.
Lest we forget the Long Live Rock and Roll album several years later.
That's true, right? And this is exactly what I would have wanted to hear a little bit more of in the drums and bass guitar section.
Right.
This could just as easily have been the little bass hook. It's got a great groove and bass line to it.
Yeah.
You tone down the organ, obviously, but wow.
I mean, I think that Glover really shines when he's locked into a groove like this.
Yeah.
Or that we just heard.
Another Indiana Jones sounding scene. Snakes. I hate snakes.
I hate snakes.
Harrison Ford impressions leave a little.
I don't blame him. I don't like snakes.
It's for snakes. We're running out of time for those tube rattles.
I feel like a more apt title for this would have been like the band, as opposed to organ.
That would have been cool, yeah, bringing the whole.
Because I mean, you know, the organ is definitely, yeah, the organ's definitely getting its time in here. But I mean, it works because the whole band is in there, minus the guitar.
Yep. Roger's going nuts. Kind of a whoa. Never surprised me. Like coming back, it's like at least 10 seconds of silence at the end here. It's kind of like a spooky sort of ending. Not what I was expecting.
No tube rattling.
No tube rattles. Well, that's all right though. It was
all right.
Some really great organ stuff there and some good hooks. What do you rank organ?
I'll give that a 4. I think that there's some really good things in there. Like I said, think it would have been more, I don't know if it would be more appropriate, but maybe more accurate to say like band. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Would have been cool if the guitar had been in on it too. It sounded at points, it sounded a little bit incomplete, I guess. It would have been cool if the guitar were in there, even doing like a rhythm while John Lord was doing his thing over it. But it was nice to hear the other guys in there doing the interplay with the band, similar to what they did in Concerto originally. Only a little more fully realized here. And even though Lord didn't rip on the organ, they still did. He did some really cool stuff as the band did. They locked into some really cool grooves, and yeah, I mean, it didn't really do anything that was expected either. Like, we thought like maybe we'd hear that at the end or something. Would have been a cool way to finish it. But,
yeah, finish it with just that rattling.
Yeah, I thought it was really, yeah, that's what I was thinking. But instead, it was kind of that little violin going all the way up, and then just that scary like orchestra hit where we're like, and then it just 10 seconds of silence.
It just startled you, like.
But yeah, overall, I liked it. Oh Jesus, my hiccups went away.
All right, I will match you with a 4. Almost completely matched up on this whole album, but yeah, I really liked that. I thought it was a return to form. I thought maybe it brought in that hook part again that I thought was missing in a few tracks, and it would have been cool maybe if they just had switched up solos throughout that one, or did like you said, a band, if they already had a piano. But it's cool if they had the piano in the beginning part and then the organ in the later part, because organ is, again, not an orchestra instrument, so it was still interesting, just like the guitar part. So overall, yeah,
right, yeah,
I'm sticking with the 4. All right, so that's Gemini Suite, the album version. How does this stack up in our rankings, John, when we look at it versus?
All right, well, let's see. Well, we have a combined rating of 7.58. All right, and let me see. So that puts us that puts us kind of there we go. Kind of in the middle here. Almost middle-ish. So that's a little more than a little more of a rating than James Gang Bang. And about a few points less than White Snake's Trouble. So that's where we are falling in there.
Yeah. Yep. That's actually a little above the middle when you look at it.
Let's see. We got, what do you have? Yeah, a little, about middle. No, well, is it?
It's more towards the.
Oh yeah, because I have the middle high. Yeah, I always sort it with the highest ratings at the bottom, so it's like I do it backwards, because I'm a dumb cuff. I don't pay attention. But yeah, I mean, overall in our ratings, 2 varied slightly, very slight variance. I actually had a little bit more, rated a teensy bit higher than you, but we were mostly locked in.
Yeah, pretty close.
Yeah. The first one was definitely my favorite. I have to say, a couple of impressions that I got like halfway through the album, it made me think that when this was actually, it's kind of an interesting concept that this exists, because until now, I realize what this whole thing makes me think of is when Kiss did the solo albums several years later. This is kind of without the orchestra, but this is kind of what I thought it was going to be like. Because I didn't know how this kind of thing worked. I didn't know that like each individual guy could be like a songwriter and, go out and get their own band. And, it's like, I thought that like, Paul's album would feature vocals and Ace's would feature guitar parts, like similar to this, like, Gene's would be like 10 songs of like bass solos like we heard on the bass. You know what I mean?
It
Like,
might have been an improvement.
well, that's the thing is, like, but that's the thing is I didn't know how that kind of thing would work. So this is actually, it's kind of weird because this type of thing exists in a form. And I was just like, oh, gee, like years later, oh boy, how stupid was I to think that that was what that kind of thing would be like, when really somebody kind of imagined and executed this kind of concept, but I mean, with an orchestra. But that's kind of my personal connection to it. Kind of weird. That's what I thought, but overall the impressions of this album was, I would say it's a mixed bag for, is my impression. Like, definitely all good. But I think some things worked better than others.
Yeah.
And I think it's definitely like a step in the right direction to improving on the concerto. Like, in terms of like overall, the production was great. I think, and the execution of like integrating the orchestra and the, solo instruments, I thought was really great. There were some parts that I don't think worked out as well, but overall, I think very strong, and really impressive too. Just, I don't know, always impressed by the Deep Purple offshoot projects and, all the different things that they were trying to achieve and experiment with. And I mean, that's one of the reasons that we love the Deep Purple family.
And just for a little comparison, we combined ranking for the concerto was a 6.0 even, and this was a 7.58. So, sometimes you look at these rankings and ranking things song by song. I was thinking about this the other day. Ranking things song by song isn't necessarily the greatest indicator because, you could look at, for example, the Butterfly Ball. If you rank each song individually stacked up, I gave it a 4.28. You gave it a 4.03. But I would if I had to just rank the album, it'd be a 5 for me. So it's an imperfect way of doing it, but it is kind of fun to break down things song by song and get really critical about it. But I would say that this works. Sure. In general, it works well. And I would say that this is that much of a quantum leap above where the concerto was. While the concerto was great and inspired and awesome and this unique experience, he took it and improved upon it. And we talk about Ritchie doing that all the time, taking a style of song and just taking it to the next level on another album. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, I think this is a huge triumph for John Lord.
Yes, indeed. And I think that the rating systems, I mean, if you listen to any podcast that do any kind of rating systems, I mean, you have some podcasts that do whole albums and they don't rank the songs individually. They kind of rank them, at the end, like this is my least favorite to best favorite, or some of them just do like one song. Some do like, like a whole album. And, so, I mean, it's like you said, it's all subjective. Take it with a grain of salt. I mean, you could listen to an album or a song tomorrow or next week and feel differently about it and be like, oh, why did I rank that? So like, there are things that I've listened to like after a show and just been like, oh, I should have ranked this higher. Like, this is actually better than I thought it was. So, I mean,
take it for what it is.
But still, I feel that it's pretty accurate for what we're doing.
I agree. Before we move on, we have to thank our foundation level patrons. Coming in at the $1 made up name tier, we have Els Murders, who I believe was like patron number 3 or something, very early, 4 or 5, early on. Same thing with Spacey Noodles. The Unfastened Leaky Mausoleum, Michael Vader, Stephen Somerville, the Concerto 1999 Fanatic, Raf Calf, Spike the Rock Cat, JJ Stenard, and heyo, for real this time, Hans Lilia. Thank you for joining us at the $1 level. We appreciate it.
All right, well, good. I thought I was going to have to take over Leaky Mausoleum because you weren't coming up with any more names from.
I'm back, baby. I got a few more.
All right.
Then we'll have to be like, ask Leaky to change their name. Could you be regular Mausoleum or something else? you know, you start something, you know, whatever, a year and a half ago, not knowing where it's going to lead, and then you're filled with regrets. No regrets. It might be a little strong. I painted myself into a corner, let's say. Okay, so that's the Gemini Suite. It came out. There's a couple quick reviews in the Melody Maker. One little snippet is, it's all turned out rather splendidly. I'd say I would agree. And Beat Instrumental says, Lord seems to have blended classical and rock in exactly the right proportions, where both disciplines act as complements to each other rather than as opponents. I think that's a great quick assessment. The Daily Mirror says, blow the bigots, knickers to the knockers. British stuff. When Deep Purple's John Lord unveiled his Gemini Suite in concert last year, the moaners had a field day. Now it's out on LP. They are already at it again. To me, this album is exciting, colorful, aggressive, beautiful, inventive, virile. What more could you want? Very well put. A resounding hallelujah from...
Jeez, what was all that?
Blow the bigots, knickers to the knockers. Knickers to the knockers.
It's just like, batten down the hatches, flipper the gibbets.
Hoist up the mizzen mast.
Hoist the main.
The review from Disc and Music Echo shortly after the album's release says, getting the best of both purples. John Lord and Deep Purple seem to be finding their own musical levels, a compromise certain to draw the best from both. Purple lean far more on commercial rock, while Lord hides himself away writing large works like Gemini Suite. This is perhaps a natural extension of his concerto for group and orchestra, but more than that, it is a showcase for 4 excellent musicians combined with one vast depth of Malcolm Arnold's London Symphony Orchestra. It's easy to dismiss works like this as pretentious nonsense, and equally easy for alleged classical music experts to dismiss it as diluted and unoriginal. Neither criticisms are fair nor justified. The main musical themes are well stated and play heavily on the emotions after the style of, say, Elgar and Tchaikovsky. The opus is broken out in 6 parts. For guitar, by the superb Albert Lee, piano, Lord, drums, Ian Paice, vocals, Yvonne Elliman and Tony Ashton, bass guitar, Roger Glover, also doing a very fine job, and organ, Lord again. This album is very easy to listen to, and you don't have to be hip to either heavy or classical music. Quality, excellent. Value, fine. Once you're inside, a rather revolting sleeve. So, a little final parting shot at the album cover. Calling it revolting. I don't know if it's revolting, but it's definitely weird.
Yeah. I mean, overall, there's some pretty decent reviews there. You know, I mean, I was kind of expecting that they were going to, you know, that the usual stuff that we hear about on some of these reviews is just like overblown hype, self-indulgent, blah, 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 you know, and it's like they actually were kind to it, you know?
Yeah, for sure.
And rightfully so.
So they, on January 4th, 1972, they performed this again, this time in Germany at the Munich Concert Hall, conducted by Eberhard Schoner, who did Windows, who we've seen before with the crazy hair. Everyone performed except for Yvonne Elliman because she was busy with the stage version of Jesus Christ Superstar. In October of 1973, Lord and Schoner again arranged another live performance, the Gemini Suite. Afterward, Lord was asked to do a new piece with Schoner, which evolved into Windows. And if you want more on that, look at Deep Purple podcast episode number 41, where we covered Windows and Ray Fenwick's great yellow suit. Check it out. But yeah, that's it. That's it, folks. That's Gemini Suite, the album version. In, I don't know, a couple of years, maybe we'll get around to the Deep Purple live performance. But we covered this one first because this was the one that people heard first. Unless you were at that live show of the Gemini Suite, you didn't hear it until the 90s when it was released. So there you have it. The Gemini Suite. We did the patrons. I remembered the patrons. So we're done. That's it. That's all we got for this week. I'm almost like I'm getting used to this new format after how many 12 episodes we've been doing it. Starting to get used to it. All right. Well, until next week. See you around, my friend.
Land ho.
Hoist up the mizzen mast. Thank you for listening to the Deep Purple podcast. If you like what you hear and would like more episodes in the future, please donate on Patreon to support the show. You can also leave us a review in Apple Podcasts to help new people discover the show. You can follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for show updates. See deeppurplepodcast.com for more details. Thank you for listening.